Today we discuss the North Carolina 11th Congressional District United States Congressional Representative Madison Cawthorn, some of his voting record and activities since being elected, as well as the North Carolina midterm elections happening this year, 2022, and some candidate information.
We will also cover some information about fentanyl use and harm reduction in our area, and touch on the ways that Henderson County and the city of Hendersonville are using American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Our guests this week are Planet Lovin' Pizza Peddlers Melody and John Crawford, owners of Two Guys Pizza in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and Lisa Mcdonald, founder and caretaker of Sweet Bear Rescue Farm, and previous founder and owner of Sanctuary Brewing Company.
Amidst so much change in the business and political landscape, we're able to sit down and discuss the impacts that a few principled decisions had on these businesses and the surrounding community. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, I wasn't able to join for this roundtable, but I am just as excited to share the loads of information available for folks interested in taking steps towards more sustainable and healthy living.
And as per usual, there's so much to talk about, but I think we did the very best that we could with the time that we had.
I concur.
Thanks to everyone at home for listening. And
Russian warship, go f*** yourself.
Is that good?
The city of Hendersonville received $4.5 million in federal American Rescue Plan Act funds. This money must be spent by 2024, and it can only be used on needs that are directly related to COVID-19. Some of the goals for that money, according to the city's website, are to make necessary improvements to water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure, to replace lost revenue caused by the pandemic, to support public health expenditures, and to address negative economic impacts caused by the pandemic. So the city council put together a survey for residents to determine the spending for the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The survey was available in both English and Spanish, and it was available from January 11th to February 11th. Now that it's closed, the results have been released, and we know that 1,226 people participated in the survey in total.
1,000, how many?
1,226.
That's 1,226 people out of...
So, as of July 1st, 2021, the city had a population of 15,414.
Wow.
Yeah. So, not a huge participation record. Some of the projects that were mentioned by people who did participate that they would like to see were affordable housing at the front. It had 116 mentions. And the second was interfaith assistance ministry specifically. So Interfaith Assistance Ministry is a nonprofit. It provides assistance to Henderson County residents, and it's been here since 1984. It was established by local churches, the Hendersonville Ministerial Association, and the local synagogue to coordinate crisis services on their behalf. So I thought that was an interesting and surprising honorable mention.
I can't help but think that that is not a secular organization, right?
Right. It's absolutely a religious organization. It's called Interfaith because it includes the one synagogue that we have in town, but the rest of the organizations represented are Christian churches.
So to be clear, that is federal dollars going to faith ministry assistance.
That's correct.
I don't know what to say about that.
Well, and I think that that is a valid question. I also appreciate the city's interest in what residents want to see and what nonprofits and organizations they do value and who they see results from. So I would be curious to dig into those responses and to get to know a little bit more about what drove so many people to cite that organization as a place that they felt could use those dollars effectively.
Could it be just in part because there are no secular assistance programs available?
I think that's a very good point and a very definite possibility. So the county had a separate fund, and it was $22.8 million. They just recently voted to use, quote, up to $500,000 of that money on infusion clinics. So in January, Party and Advent Health decided to designate specific spaces to monoclonal antibody infusion clinics. And then Henderson County decided to give some of the federal relief spending money to those clinics. According to county spokesperson Catherine Fenati As of February, the county had not used that money on any other project, so this was the first spending of that federal relief money. As spending continues for both the city and the county, we will update you here.
So, our United States Congressional District is called the North Carolina 11th, and our current United States Congressperson is Republican Madison Cawthorn. Madison Cawthorn was elected in our general election in 2020 and defeated Democratic candidate Mo Davis in that race by 12.2% of the vote. The numbers there were Cawthorn with 245,351 votes and Davis with 190,609 votes. Cawthorn sits on the House Committee on Education and Labor, which is specifically the early childhood, elementary, and secondary education, workforce protections subcommittees. He's also on the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, namely Economic Opportunity Subcommittee. His voting record thus far includes voting no to suspending energy imports from Russia, most recently. He was one of only 15 representatives in the country to vote no on the Opioid Prescription Verification Act of 2021, which was considered non-controversial and received a staggering bipartisan approval rating of 96%. He was also one of only 6 to vote no on the Supplemental Impact Aid Flexibility Act, a bipartisan bill that requires local educational agencies, or LEAs, participating in the Impact Aid program to use the student count or federal property valuation data from their fiscal year 2022 program applications as applicable for their fiscal year 2023 program applications. Publicly, he most infamously participated as a speaker during the rally on the National Mall that led to the deadly January 6th, 2021 insurrection. He's repeatedly brought weapons into school board meetings, once a gun into an airport. He now has traffic violations in multiple counties and a revoked driver's license, and all of this before he decided to publicly call Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president currently at war with Russia, at tremendous human cost, a, quote, thug.
No, he didn't.
He did. There's a video. It was viral on Twitter this past week. And he also loudly endorses and supports the previous White House occupant, who called the Russian invasion of Ukraine a, quote, peace force on Twitter.
So Cawthorn is voting against even bipartisan values and bills at this point.
Yes, he is. And I know that in our first episode, we talked about the historic significance of gerrymandering in North Carolina. And while we didn't have time to really deep dive on that,
which would take days, literal seasons of time to do.
Agreed. We did, however, mention that our maps were only just recently approved. Well, Cawthorn's term is up next year. And once the newly gerrymandered maps were released, he openly abandoned our district and filed to run for Congress in an adjacent congressional district that he doesn't even live in. And he can do this in North Carolina because there's really no law that says you have to live in the district you're running for. However, after the judiciary rejected those maps and the new ones were approved, he decided he'd change his mind and return to this district, filing to run for re-election right here in the North Carolina 11th Congressional District. So at this point, Gina, I'm going to sidebar some opinion.
That is perfectly acceptable. Please do that.
Okay, so this punk-ass bitch of a fuck that is flagrantly ignoring our district and exploiting the seemingly limitless audacity of these new age celebrity politics. This motherfucker is in the bed on every level, and we need to do anything and everything that we can to vote him out.
Vote him out!
So on that note, this is the midterm election year, y'all, and our primary is on May 17th. We need to vote. As primary day approaches us, we'll mainline as much information as possible about polling locations, getting people to the polls, absentee and voter registration information, and beyond. But first and foremost, y'all, please remember the date.
May 17th. May 17th.
Set an alarm on your phone for 6 p.m. May 16th to remind you to vote tomorrow after you get home from work or something. Anything you can do. Again, we'll be keeping folks informed about the primary here too, but please, please vote. It's one of your many superpowers. And on that note, we do have to take a second to make some public disclosures regarding our podcast, Fire on the Mountain. We as a podcast do not support or endorse any Republican candidate for Congress in the May 17th, 2022 United States congressional primary. Gina has not publicly endorsed any Democratic candidate specifically for the May 17th election yet. However, I have to disclose that I've publicly endorsed and will continue to support Jay Carey for North Carolina's 11th United States congressional district. I also am presently offering volunteer services for his campaign and receiving no payment for those services. That being said, your Democratic candidates on the ballot
May 17th
in alphabetical order are Jasmine Beach Ferrara, Jay Carey, Katie Dean, Marco Gutierrez, Bo Hess, and Bynum Lunsford. Fire on the Mountain podcast invites our listeners to review the candidates' platforms and again, does not currently endorse any Democratic Democratic candidate.
Oh, my bad. Are you recording?
Fentanyl use in western North Carolina is on the rise, as it is nationwide. However, it's a concentrated problem here in Appalachia. According to an article written in December of 2021 in North Carolina Health News, more than 10,000 North Carolinians have died from drug overdoses since 2017. Between April 2020 and April 2021, the national death rate due to overdose rose 27%. In North Carolina, the percentage for that same statistic is 37%, so 10% higher than the national average.
Is there any, correlating information about why that is?
So there are a couple of different theories that have been posited by experts in the field. A lot of experts say that fentanyl is just everywhere now. It's in almost all of the illicit drug supply that comes through the area. Becca Goldstein with the North Carolina Harm Reduction Coalition, which is in Wilmington, notes that although fentanyl was traditionally found in opioids, it can now be regularly found in stimulants as well. This adds an extra layer of potential for overdose because people who use stimulants are less likely to carry overdose reversal drugs like Narcan. So speaking of overdose reversal, harm reduction is an approach to substance use that encourages safer using. Some examples are needle exchanges and carrying naloxone or Narcan. Another harm reduction option is to use fentanyl test strips to test your drugs, which cost about $1 each and are generally available at harm reduction sites. Studies do show that all substance use, including legal substances like alcohol, increased over the pandemic, and health workers attribute that to increased anxiety, isolation, and distress. Another contributing factor to the extreme rise of overdose deaths in North Carolina is overall cuts to state mental health funding. This comes into play specifically in counties like Gaston, Lincoln, and Cleveland counties, where their mental health funding has been cut by a total of around $60 million over the past 6 years. So these agencies used to have on-the-ground overdose response teams, and they can no longer afford to have those. Naloxone is available at free or reduced rates through the Hope Coalition, directed by Julie Honeycutt. Julie has graciously given us permission to tell you about her daughter, Anna. Anna would be my age now, but she died at 20 from an overdose. Her death affected our community in a huge way, and we will continue to update you on harm reduction resources in our community in her honor and in the honor of so many of our loved ones who have been affected by substance use and addiction.
With that, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, our guests this week are Melody Crawford, John Crawford, and Lisa Mcdonald.
This episode is brought to you by Oklawaha Brewing Company. Oklawaha Brewing is a nano brewery and taproom committed to brewing high-quality beer in a vibrant atmosphere and is conveniently located in downtown Hendersonville. Drop in sometime and check it out.
So, here we are inside Two Guys Pizza in Hendersonville, and I am joined with John and Melody Crawford and Lisa Mcdonald. Thank you guys so much for being here. Let's start with a little bit about who you are and what you do. John?
Well, I'm John Crawford, and my wife and I own Two Guys Pizza, and we try to serve the Hendersonville area some good comfort food with plenty of cruelty-free yummies here in this town, and just trying to help people find a better way to live, a more healthier way to live, and a more humane way to live.
I'm Melody Crawford, owner of Two Guys Pizza also. I'm just committed to finding a better way and sharing that with the people that I come in contact with every day. Social media is a big part of that. It's pretty much 100% about the animals for me, that the reason we transitioned. Absolutely, because of how many animals that we were responsible for the last 14 years of being in business serving ribs and wings, hamburgers. And it got so bad that I couldn't sleep at night, that it's all I would think of. Beautiful story. A little rooster showed up out of the blue in the back, and I named him Freebird, and he would sit on our register where our heat and air coming through, and the boys would have to go past him with the bag of wings, and he would always stare at them, and that had an effect. So I'm like, it's definitely time. I can't do this. And I really think that was a gift for him coming to Two Guys and to push us in that direction. And we were a very successful restaurant, and pretty much put a knife in it when we transitioned over. And we are right now rebuilding our restaurant now. So anyway, peace, love, and love the animals.
So I'm Lisa Mcdonald. I started my own nonprofit in 2017 called Kindness Empire. The main passion in my life is animal advocacy. So the biggest part of my nonprofit is a silo called Sweet Bear Rescue Farm, which is located in my home in Flat Rock. My immediate family is nearly 50 non-humans that I share a life with. So most are victims of abuse, neglect, torture, etc. They come to live with me as permanent refuge, and we try to never look back. So we don't focus on the things that had happened to them before they live with us. We concentrate on safety, stability, kindness, and love. We're open for volunteers and tours. We also have camping on the property. We get pretty creative with ways to raise money and awareness for my family members. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you guys for sharing. I'm going to be completely honest. Before I hit record, we did have a conversation. And for folks listening, since this is not a live podcast, it's important to share what's overshadowing this interview right now is the events in the middle of the world in Ukraine, which are increasingly difficult for us to deal with and to have conversations about anything else. So just know that we're going to do our best here, but we're all definitely aware that that's definitely on all of our minds. And I think that I speak for all of us when we say that we stand with Ukraine, and that we're all going to be the first to do anything that we can to show solidarity or support when we can.
Yes.
And as somebody that has a nonprofit that is a silo for advocating for all living beings, if there is a way we can help the Ukraine through my nonprofit, I'm all about it. So I'd love to have an open, wider discussion about that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll keep that conversation open.
Yeah, and the bylaws allow for things like that because global relief is part of our mission statement. So
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share with folks a little bit about the restaurant and what y'all have here?
Yeah, sure. We still have our same menu, just like I said, with plant-based options. We decided, to make this 180 in our life due to several different things that that came about. My wife's obviously love for animals, and mine as well. But I'm concerned about the climate, concerned about this planet not allowing my children and grandchildren to live here one day, to no fault of the planet's, all fault to us. Therefore, kind of, did our 180 going to plant-based completely. We were already about 38% vegetarian, and we realized that based on, different pizzas and pastas that we sold. So, we thought we could sustain, and we are going to. It's definitely a different business model, and whenever you whenever you go through about 350,000 chickens in the amount of 12 to 15 years, and probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I don't know, 125 to 150,000 hogs, and you profit off of that. And unfortunately, you tend to get, you get known for your ribs, you get known for your wings, you get known for your burgers, all your different meat dishes. And we were, as my wife said, we're very successful, and to just all of a sudden decide that that's not going to be one day. And of course, don't get me wrong, COVID helped out with that a lot. There's a lot of stupidity that we dealt with through COVID. So therefore, a lot of soul searching, a lot of sacrifices that we made to be able to continue this business. And, that's what we did. But like I say, I guess obstacles for us, is with customers, the immediate shock of them not being able to come in and, chow down on 10 wings. But we used to be that place. So obviously there's been a lot of pushback from customers when it's come to that. At the same time, people have the right to change. People have the right to do the right thing. We definitely reserve that right, and that's what we do. And we fight it every day, and the pushback still goes on. It's just really hard to swallow sometimes, and I get really distraught sometimes trying to do it, and it's overwhelming to me. But you keep pushing on, and that's what we're doing. And any which way, I'll shut up and let my wife go now.
You said everything that I feel. I mean, we're a team, so that's how it happened. One day we were, one day we weren't. And we knew the consequences. We knew what was going to happen. We sold 2 houses to make this happen. We sacrificed to do it. So, and we're not stopping.
And we'll never go back. So that's just it.
So I have to say, from the outside, it literally has been life-changing for me, and just watching your journey has been unbelievable and has given me faith in humanity. And the thing is what you two are doing is living your truth, and most people don't have the bravery to do that, and that's why you can't convince people, because deep down they know it's killing the planet, they know it's not good for them, but the fear of going to a birthday party, going to a Christmas dinner, going to a wedding, and you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The normalcy of society keeps them away from doing the right thing. So to be where you are in life and stick with your convictions, knowing that it might take a hit on your business and doing it anyway because of the people you are, is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
And as role models too, because you also have a whole bevy of children that look up to you, and they've been super supportive. They've seem to agree with the decision that you've made. One of them's a streamer, and it seems like he's very vocal about it as well, and very supportive of that path. And you're inspiring to them to kind of take up the torch and pass that information along to other folks also, kind of keeping that conversation going.
It's funny you mentioned Christian, because I've mentioned before in the past, he's the catalyst of how all this began, because he was streaming late one night and couldn't go to sleep, and happened upon the documentary Seaspiracy. Mm-hmm. And he watched it all the way through and was absolutely overwhelmed, to where he called me super early that morning and proceeded his campaign of us to watch that. Now, like I say, all this time, my wife has always said, we should just try the vegetarian way. And I was always the one, what, no meat? That was my favorite thing to say. What, no meat? We're just having vegetables tonight? What, no meat? So, but any which way, Christian started it. And he was just mainly at that time concerned about the shrimp, because of the over fishing of the ocean. And because that's the most drastic thing right now that we're looking down the barrel of, is a dead ocean, because once it's gone, we're gone. And that's what could happen within the next 27 to 35 years, and people don't seem to understand, that, I could still be old and wrinkly walking around then, so hopefully we all will be, right? But, you know, we got kids and we got grandkids.
And on a positive note to that, there are so many amazing plant-based seafood products,
Yes.
sea life. But literally, I mean, watching the world change to where in advertising,
Yes.
the word vegan is now something that is trending. So like you see makeup commercials and they're vegan, or vitamins are vegan, etc. That to me is a beautiful thing. But the strides we've made in food is unbelievable. So there's companies like Good Catch Foods that are doing completely plant-based
delicious.
seafood. I like to say sea life because
Sea life.
you know they're fish and shrimp and octopuses. But yeah, so there are great options out there. It's really just exposure, and you all are on the front line of letting people know.
But I remember seeing a study where somebody had calculated that our species would be extinct by 2035 if X, Y, and Z hadn't changed. And that study came out in the middle of the century, in the middle of the 20th century. And it's just fascinating to see that we haven't really seen a decline in trends at all, and that we've even obliterated climate models as having being drafted as early as 10 years ago, and we really do see, the data is there that industrial farming is completely destroying the planet. And that one Seaspiracy got me. I actually like the way that story was told too. It starts off with a kid who's just trying to be all progressive and take the plastic out and everything, and but it changed.
So that's so funny that you bring that up, because it's don't use straws while you're eating
Right.
lobster.
Thank you
It's
very
so
much.
Ridiculous. Let's save the oceans while eating.
Don't use straws.
Sure, don't use straws, but
eat
literally
that,
the biggest pollution in the ocean are old nuts. That's what makes up the majority of it. There's also tons of trash in the ocean, but old fishing nets, that's number one, and I don't think people realize that.
For people listening, we are in the restaurant right now, so the ice machine kicks on sometimes because they have a fully functional ice machine, and that's going to happen. So
Sorry.
So there's reasons why y'all have made the decisions that you've made. And those are principled decisions that you've made, not just for you and your families and your personal well-being, and not even just specifically for the communities where you are, here in Western North Carolina, but also the principled positions for the entire planet. And you are all very well informed and educated advocates on the work that you do. That being said, it doesn't come obviously without a cost, without a price. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out community pushback, a lot of social obstacles that y'all have had to overcome in the work that you've done. And I guess just to offer some perspective for folks listening, would you want to share any of those experiences or some of the narratives you've heard, or just general pushback? Yep.
Well, the funny thing about the plant-based, because we're Two Guys Pizza, planet-friendly food and brews, and the funny thing, I mentioned earlier that we were somewhere around 38% vegetarian to begin with, based on our numbers throughout the years, and that was pretty firm, and I thought that was pretty impressive for me to be able to stake this on. But one thing I wasn't counting on was that even with vegetarians, people that don't eat a lot of meat, but then the minute you talk about a substance that's been put together by plants to form something that represents meat, to help meat eaters come over to what we're doing, they go, oh my God, I can't eat that, like they're about to put nuclear waste in their mouth or something. And I'm like, vegetables, it's stuff you eat every day more than you eat meat, because what people don't seem to understand is I'm not saying everyone, but the majority of people eat more vegetables, far more than they do meat. If they're any kind of health whatsoever. So, but they act like it's taboo.
But
So as the longest reigning vegan
Yes,
in
ma'am.
in the room.
Yep.
I'm going on 16 years meat-free and 8 years vegan. So I was vegetarian for 8 years, and I'm going on my 8th year of being completely vegan. There's something I call the vegan arc, where when you start out, you feel so empowered and like you're living your truth, and that everything is beautiful and your mind has been expanded and it's glorious. And then it turns into the struggle with community. To me, the best advice I could give is figure out a way to get out of that dark place as soon as possible. I personally find the vegan movement to be very tactical. So it is run by emotion because we all come from a place of pain. And so being very, very conscious about how it's affecting you and your mental and emotional health is incredibly important. It's something I've spoken about publicly for a long time now, is my own struggles with depression and emotional health and mental health, and how I still struggle with those things, but I have processes that say like, okay, you can be in this dark place for X amount of time, but then we need to pull out. And we need to figure out how we're going to get out of those things. Every time you go to the grocery store, instead of being heartbroken about the chicken nuggets on the shelf, look at the vegan options and how they are literally taking over the frozen food and meat section. You need to be inspired, and focusing on the positive and the changes is what's going to keep this movement going. And there's so much self-flagellation that goes along with veganism. And to me, the question every day is, are my words and actions helping or hurting animals? This is a very complicated issue, but having some place to find internal joy that you can share with the world is going to save the world. I sound like such a hippie right now, but it's true.
Nothing wrong with a hippie.
And the prices too. I mean, people talk about inflation affecting, the price of milk.
Just 30% off.
Yeah, or steaks or whatever. And I go in and I'm like, you're talking about the chicken nuggets. Is it Gardein? Is that how you say that brand? Gardein. That price hasn't changed at all. That box of chicken nuggets are
still the same.
It's just the exact same. And I was telling somebody, I was like, well, while you're complaining about steak, I literally can eat, whatever I want, like pretty much all the time, and it's not that any more expensive, or. So, have you guys seen in your products here? Have you seen inflation affecting a lot of the prices of?
The Impossible. Has the Impossible stayed the same, John?
Yeah,
you buy it in the block.
It stayed the same.
Produce has gone way up. Produce is about 30%, but
right. The biggest thing is, we saw meat skyrocketing before this happened during COVID, and it really has not. I mean, it came down a little bit, but it's leveled off.
For me, as the youngest vegan in the room, I decided to make that shift only last October and November, so I'm just a few months in there, but. I can say, immediately that it is a whole, you think you're better than me type thing, or a scoff, like cool, like have fun with that little, your little liberal fun, It's because people don't understand how sustainable it really is. Like,
it's totally sustainable.
And sustainable just meaning you can literally do it your entire life, and people have, and we've seen, and I guess Game Changers was another documentary where we've seen the impacts of going vegan on the physical body.
Beautiful documentary.
Yeah, it's great. So outside of, we're talking a lot about veganism right now, which is obviously important to all of us, and the impacts of industrial farming and climate change is very real where we are. And we are going to have an episode talking about flooding and how our deteriorating infrastructure over the next several years is going to be a cause for serious community mobilization. But outside of those things, there's also y'all have each sort of taken a stand for other isures, and you've rallied behind other flags. So would you like to talk a little bit about some of the work you've done outside of planet-friendly consuming?
I can talk about that quite a bit. So As I explained at the beginning, my nonprofit is technically called Kindness Empire because I really didn't just want to get siloed into one kind of mission-driven ideology, which is advocating for non-human animals. The goal for me has always been to advocate for any marginalized people. And when I say people, I mean humans and non-humans. There's a concept of personhood, which is if you have a personality and you are an individual, you are a person. I said earlier, look for the helpers. And I completely believe that there is a greater picture. The universe can see what you're trying to do and how you're trying to vibrate in the bigger picture, and things are going to work out.
And that's the crazy thing about we can kind of go back to a correlation there with the meat, serving meat then, because we used to get, obviously we're in this town where, the big percentage of people lean right, and we've been on a lonely island for a long time, but fortunately, then we sold meat. So because we did it so well, they'd still come in. And because they enjoyed our product so much, it seemed like they were oblivious to where they were. And so it was always just kind of comical to watch.
So, something I realized, I lived in Mexico for just a little bit, and I realized when I was there that there is a privilege aspect to veganism in a lot of places too, because they don't have the agricultural infrastructure to be able to have a sustainable diet that does not involve killing animals. So do y'all have any insight or response to people that say, well, it's a privilege to be vegan, that sort of directed language? Is there anything that you would say to people that feel that way or offer that?
Yeah, so comparing yourself to a person that lives in a situation that is completely unrelatable to your privilege is an unfair comparison. If you have the ability to change your life, then how dare you look upon someone else that doesn't have those options and use any judgment. I do think, the two countries I've spent the most time in talking about these issues where you can't grow food, and you eat what is available to you to keep your families going, are Uganda and Haiti. But I will also say that being a vegan in Uganda and Haiti was very easy for me. I also went there with money in a place of privilege. I think it's completely unfair for the developed world to look at the undeveloped world and make a comparison about food. That is white privilege.
Yes, absolutely.
So because this is a regional podcast, we do like to focus on wins and victories. Anything that y'all can see as a win in the local narrative or the way that things have gone that was different than the way it was before? Something that kind of is optimistic, something that people take away and feel good about.
We are how many months in now?
We're going on 10 months now.
We're sitting here and the lights are
on.
on.
The lights are still on.
The damn ice machine sure as hell is on.
Ice machine's on. Everything's running at full capacity.
And we still employ how many people?
A few.
Just a few,
A few.
but they're still there.
A few. But that's, so far that's our win, locally.
And you get to continue to be a catalyst for tabletop conversations with
Absolutely.
kids whose parents are coming into town or parents whose kids are coming into town that are looking for a place that's vegan or something
Absolutely.
like that.
That's a good point.
That thrills me. That brings me so much joy when that happens through those doors.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's trust me, there's a place I know, you'll get pizza, you won't even know that that's vegan cheese.
Right.
You're
Seriously,
the burger,
right.
you won't even be able to tell,
Yeah.
and you get to be that place, which is cool, that sort of familial experiment.
I try to tell my kids that every day, at the end of the day, you can just feel like you've accomplished something. And, it gives you an easier time getting up the next morning if you plan on something and accomplish it. So daily victories right now, I think, are huge for me. Us,
Definitely
I guess.
huge
It's
for us.
just
Yes.
trying to stay, true to what we're doing. It's a victory every day. I mean, if we get one new person in here at least a week, but if you get one new person a day that tries what we're doing and has a positive thing from it, comment, then that's a victory.
That's a victory.
So.
Yep.
Sometimes just thinking about a lot of these things can be pretty overwhelming. It can lead to trouble sleeping, depleted energy, and scattered thoughts. And that's why sometimes it's nice to find a stress management facilitator. Leslie Carey helps people manage their stress levels so that they feel centered and grounded by sharing easy-to-use breathing techniques and relaxing energy treatments. You can contact her through her website at peaceofmovement.com. But Leslie also has Reiki sessions and teaches classes out of Laughing Elephant Yoga right here in Hendersonville. Contact Laughing Elephant Yoga and book a session today.
So we're going to try out a new listener-submitted bit where we shamelessly leverage our millennial identities and use text acronyms to share valuable, ridiculous, interesting, or totally not interesting information in...
What's the T9 word, bird? This week, the word is WTAF. So since 2016, U.S. government officials overseas and their families have reported sudden, unexplained brain injuries with symptoms of vertigo, confusion, and memory loss. The CIA, the FBI, and the State Department are investigating a theory that some of these officials were injured by a, quote, unseen weapon. Who might be targeting Americans and why are unknown.
Incidents have been reported in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Senior national security officials say that they were stricken in Washington and on the grounds of the White House. Olivia Troy, who was Homeland Security and Counterterrorism Advisor to then Vice President Mike Pence, had served in the Pentagon, deployed to Iraq, served in the Defense Intelligence Agency and the National Counterterrorism Center.
Then, in the summer of 2019, she was descending stairs towards the White House when she felt that she'd been physically struck. She describes the sensation as a piercing feeling on the side of her head. She said, quote, "It was like I remember it was on the right side of my head and I got like vertigo. I was unsteady. I felt nauseous. I was somewhat disoriented." She goes on to describe this happening several times at several different locations.
And the cases persist, like there's several, and the story is fascinating. At one point, a Dr. David Relman led 2 government panels that investigated the injuries. He's a professor of medicine at Stanford University, and what he found was clear evidence of an injury to the auditory and vestibular system of the brain, which is everything starting with the inner ear where humans perceive sound and sense balance, and then where they translate those perceptions into electrical signals.
So James Benford is a physicist and leading authority on microwaves and was not part of the original government studies, but he co-wrote a book on portable microwave transmitters that could damage the tissues of the brain. And he says the best explanation, the most plausible, it's a high-power microwave weapon. Legit.
Like WTAF. We got microwave guns now? Sci-fi style. Legit microwave guns, and we're actively using them.
Yeah. What the actual
That's all the time we have this week, folks. No, that sounds weird as fuck. That's all the time we have this week, folks. We're busy. Okay. That's all the time we have this week, folks. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. It just takes a click.
Too true, and we are a fully donation-based platform that would love to start streaming everywhere. Spotify, Apple, and beyond, but that takes licensing, and licensing takes money.
We wanted to take a minute and shout out our very first Patreon patron, Caroline Gunther. Caroline, we love and appreciate you, and thank you so much for supporting this endeavor. Y'all, Caroline will get early access to episodes, she'll get access to outtakes and bonus content, and she'll also get to write in and ask me anything for Raph or myself or for the podcast in general. So if you would like those benefits too, you can go to
patreon.com/Fire on the Mountain Pod. Hold on, I'm gonna redo that.
Mountain because I said MTN. Damn, fuck, my bad.
Is it mountain spelled out?
Mountain spelled
Okay. Patreon.com/Fire on the Mountain Pod.
Thanks again for listening, everyone.
And Happy New Year.
Is that good?